Everybody, and welcome to a new episode of MazzaOnMets. It's Evan Mazza here, and we got a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up on about all things New York Mets baseball over the past week. The Mets are currently on, hey, they're back to a winning streak. They're back to a hot streak, a 7-game winning streak. They're coming off back-to-back sweeps of the Los Angeles Angels and the San Francisco Giants. Last time we talked, they had just lost a series to the Cincinnati Reds coming off the All-Star break. They won the last game of the series to at least get one. They won the last game, but didn't think that would begin the start of a winning streak. But here we are. The Los Angeles Angels came into Citi Field pretty hot. They won 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia at Philadelphia, and the Mets swept them. And then they go to San Francisco, a place that they've had troubles in the past winning. Of course, we all remember the 2000 playoffs, but over the past couple of years, the Mets have had trouble winning at Oracle Park. They've had some pretty bad losses there over the last few years, but they went to San Francisco and swept them. And now here we are. What a difference a week makes, because again, this is baseball. This is 162 games. And what a difference a week makes. A week ago at this time, we were kind of like, really, a week ago at this time, we were kind of like, oh, the Mets are still slumping. They were 10-20 in the last 30 games. They had lost 6.5 or 5.5 back from the division, from the Phillies. And although the Mets kind of lucked out because the Phillies were playing 500 baseball right around the time the Mets were struggling. So that because of that, the Mets were able to still keep their distance from the Phillies. The Phillies didn't create any separation. So, but the Mets were able to, I wouldn't say weather the storm. There's still a lot of things they got to improve on and get better, but they were able to kind of get out of it, it looks like, and win these next 7 games. So good on the Mets, and we'll get to the opening game here. They played the Los Angeles Angels after their win over the Cincinnati Reds. Kodai Senga took the mound that day, and this was a struggle for Kodai Senga. This was his second start off the injured list. He went 3 innings, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Struggled with his command, left pitches over the middle. So this was in a second start off of, and this will be something we'll talk about more with Senga when we get to Sunday's game against the Giants. But yeah, this was in a second start off the injured list. This was easily his worst start of the season. Um, so in the top of the second inning, he gave up a home run to Logan O'Hoppe, and then the top of the third inning, he gave up a double to Taylor Ward, which scored 2 runs after making it 3-0 Angels. Gave up a couple of walks to Mike Trout, gave up another RBI single to Joe Adell to make it 4-0. And and that was his outing. Very disappointing again, but it was only a second outing off the injured list. He struggled with command, struggled with his consistency. Certainly his worst outing of the season. But you know what the Mets did? The Mets picked them up, and sometimes that should look. That's what we've been hoping for the Mets to do throughout, especially their offense throughout the course of the season, to pick up your pitching. Your pitching is not going to be great every day. Your pitching is not going to be. I'm watching Evan and Tiki on WFAN, and they got the Jets schedule up. We got to obviously we'll talk more about Mazza and Jets soon as training camp is going on, but those are the Jets schedule. But again, we look at Senga, and I think when you have your guys are not going to be at the top of their game every day, so it's up to the offense to pick them up, and the Mets did. The Mets offense picked it up. In the bottom of the 4th, Brett Baty hit a 2-run homer to make it 4-2 Los Angeles Angels. The game remained 4-2 Los Angeles Angels until the top of the 7th, excuse me. Taylor Ward got a base hit to drive in a run that made it 5-2. That was off Chris Davinsky. The Mets bullpen. This was the Mets bullpen. We'll talk about this, but the Mets bullpen did a solid job throughout this whole winning streak. They've done a solid job throughout this whole winning streak, but they did a good job here to keep the Angels kind of at bay here, to give the Mets at least a chance to come back in this game. Then we get to the bottom of the 7th. Francisco Lindor, who was in the middle of a huge slump, he broke out of it. He was in the middle of a huge slump. I think he ended up going 0 for 30 something, I think. But he gets an RBI ground out to make it 5-3. He steals second, and Juan Soto gets a game-tying single in the bottom of the 7th inning to tie the game 5-5, right through the middle. Then we get to the bottom of the 8th again. They keep the Mets bullpen, keeps it scoreless. Brooks Raley comes in the top of the 8th. He keeps it scoreless. We go to the bottom of the 8th, and Francisco Alvarez gets a key double on a sharp fly ball to right center that reaches. And then Ronnie Mauricio got the go-ahead run on a fielder's choice, a little dribbler there. Gotta talk about Francisco Alvarez. We'll talk more about him on this show. Francisco Alvarez has come back and he has played really good baseball, but he got a key double to make it second and third. Mauricio hits the fielder's choice. Soto and Brett Beatty ends up scoring on it to give the Mets a 6-5 lead. Brandon Nimmo got a sacrifice fly to make it 7-5. And Edwin Diaz, I believe it was Edwin Diaz. Yeah, Edwin Diaz came in and got 1-2-3, struck out the side for the Mets to win their second game in a row. So a good job by the Mets bullpen. Good job by the Mets offense to pick your starters up. And they did. They did a good job picking Sang up after he had, worst start of the season. And then the next day later, this was more of what more of what we've seen from the Mets do. The Mets offense went 2 for 8 runs in scoring position this game, but it was their pitching. The Mets pitching was able to kind of again do what they've usually done this season. Get them a win here. Get enough. They got enough from their offense, and the Mets were able to get a win. Frankie Montes had a pretty solid outing, 5 2/3, 8 hits, 2 earned runs allowed, 6 strikeouts. They go to Rico Garcia. He pitches a shutout inning. They go to Reed Garrett. He pitches an inning and a third shutout ball. And then Ryan Stanek closed out the game after in the top of the ninth. Edwin Diaz obviously had pitched 2 straight days. The offense the Mets had in this game, but the big one in this game from the Mets offense and we'll talk about it. We'll keep talking about him because he's been on a roll. Francisco Alvarez. The Mets are now 2-0 in this game, heading to the bottom of the fifth. Alvarez hits a 2-run homer deep into the left field. He's been hitting. And I think, again, this is exactly what, if you're the Mets, this is exactly what you want to see with Alvarez coming out of the injured list. Or, no, excuse me, not the injured list, but getting sent down. He got sent down and he comes back immediately and he contributes. And he has kept contributing as we keep going through this winning streak the Mets are on. Alvarez has played a big key role in this because Alvarez is hitting. Nimmo then gets an RBI base hit to make it 3-2 Mets, and that was all the scoring they needed for this game. Kind of what we've seen usually with the Mets all year long. They kind of get, they pitching carries the day, and then the offense they kind of just get enough, and then they win the game. Next day game 6-3. Sean Manaea pitches solidly. This was Manaea's, I believe this was Manaea's second start off the injured list. Yeah, this is his second. His first one was against Cincinnati. His third outing overall because again he came out of the bullpen against Kansas City. Pretty solidly, 5 innings, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks. Again, only 5 innings for him, but again, it's only his third day off the injured list, second start overall off the injured list. Braziman hit a scoreless inning. Jose Budo, he struggled the most. This was Budo's comeback off the injured list when he was sick. He struggled the most. He only went 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 2 earned runs. But then Brooks Raley came in. He walked a pair, but got one inning, got an inning, and then Edwin Diaz came in for a 4-out save. He went an inning a third with 2 strikeouts to close the game here. And then over offensively, Brandon Nimmo led off the game with a home run to give the Mets a 1-0 lead. And then in the bottom of the third, Francisco Lindor. This was Lindor's big breakout game. Lindor needed a game like this. He was 0 for 30 something. He had looked, was going through a rough stretch, a rough patch, but he's Francisco Lindor. You know he's going to break out of it. You know he's going to eventually get going again, and he did on this day. He got two RBI base hits. He got an RBI single to give the Mets a 2-1 lead. Pete Alonso then launched a home run to make it 5-1 Mets. Francisco Lindor would add on another RBI single to make it to give the Mets 6 runs on the day, and the Mets completed the sweep of the Los Angeles Angels. A game the Mets a series. This is a tough Angels team coming in. Just again, they have been scrappy. They've been hitting the ball really well. They had been coming in, just won 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia against the Phillies, and the Mets were able to. But the Mets again, I said in the last show when we previewed the series. The Mets still were the better team on paper. This was still a team you should be able to beat, but this was a tough team coming in. And, just coming off losing 2 out of 3 in Cincinnati, West Coast road trip coming up, they really needed to kind of get some wins here against the Angels. And a sweep is pretty good. I would have taken 2 out of 3, but a sweep is pretty good. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad for the Mets against the Angels, but they end up coming out with a sweep, and that's even better. So as they went through the West Coast road trip, and we get to Friday's game against San Francisco. Like Holmes took the mound today, only went 5, but I will say in the first inning, didn't look like he would pitch particularly well. Didn't look like it wasn't going to go. Didn't look. I think he threw over 30 pitches in the first inning. He gave He gave up a run in the first. The Mets had just given him a 2-0 lead in the top of the first. You know, yeah, 2 out of 3 in the top of the first. They got first and second with nobody out. Juan Soto hit a RBI ground out to Lindor got a base hit. Nimmo got a double. Juan Soto got an RBI ground out. Pete Alonso got a sacrifice fly, and right off the bat, the Mets are up 2-0 to kind of give their pitching a little more comfort. Right, I've always said that before. You know, you know, the Mets lineup has to kind of give them some run support, just give the pitching a little more breathing room, a little more comfort level, And but a long bottom of the first for Clay Holmes, he gives up a run back on a William Adames ground out, but he settled in from there. And a big moment of the game for for Clay Holmes came in the couple of big moments. Came in the bottom of the third. He got Rafael Devers grounded with a double play in the bottom of the third. And then I believe it was the bottom of the fourth, bottom of the fifth inning, his last inning. He gave up a base hit to Casey Schmidt. He gave up a base hit to Patrick Bailey. So first and second, nobody out. It's still a tight 2-1 game. He gets Helio Ramos to pop out. And then the big battle with Rafi Devers strikes him out swinging on a sinker, a foul tip sinker. He got him twice swinging on a sweeper, and a sinker to get Devers out. He then gets the next guy on a pop out, and he gets out of it, and he's able to keep the game at least at bay. It was 5-1 Mets in the top of the fifth, and he's able to keep or excuse me, 6-1. It was 6-1 Mets in the bottom of the fifth, and he was able to keep the Mets, keep that lead at bay, keep it the way it is, and work at least give you five. But it didn't look like he would get five in this game. So a decent five. Again, it was another 5 innings for Clay Holmes, but at least this one was decent and you know uh something. And again, didn't look like he would go five, especially when he had a rough first inning. But he went five, so you take that. That was a good job by him. Some other Mets scoring. Francisco Lindor continued to get out of a slump. He homered in the top of the third to give the Mets a 3-1 lead. To continue the scoring for the Mets. The Mets really jumped on Logan Webb. The Logan Webb pitched in this game for the San Francisco Giants, and Logan Webb has historically done well against the Mets. They really jumped on him well. They did a good job on him today. Lindor's home run make it 3-1. They got another one on Tyrone Taylor for a ground out after a couple of hits. Brandon Nimmo had an RBI, made it 6-1. So a good job by them. But this was probably the Mets. This was probably the Mets offense's best performance in quite some time. This was certainly the Mets offense's best performance. They were on top of every pitch. They were in control. They were on top of every pitch. They were in control of their at-bats. They were hitting the ball very well. They looked comfortable at the plate. They were swinging what Logan Webb was giving them. This was certainly I think their best performance on offense in a while. In a while. I don't know how long, but in a while. Um, the Mets ended up winning the game 8-1. A good win for the Mets to kick off their West Coast road trip. To kind of 8-1 win, get a good 8-1 win, and then Saturday's game. This was all pitching and all defense. The Mets offense in this game went back to the way the Mets offense, the way the inconsistencies of the Mets offense continues. They play well, they look great in one day, and then the next day, the next game, they go back to was it 2 for 11 runs of scoring position? 2 for 11 runs of scoring position. They had the bases loaded, nobody out at one point in this game and didn't score. But pitching, and more pitching and defense. Pitching and defense, and that was highlighted at the end of the game. The Mets pitching in this game, David Pearson took the mound, been their most consistent guy all year long. 6 innings, 8 hits. Not a great 6 innings, gave up 8 hits, and he walked a couple. But got through 6, 4 strikeouts. Reed Garrett won an inning, Stanek won an inning, Edwin Diaz. Bit of a rough patch for him in both Saturday and Sunday games, but he was able to get the save on that one. We'll get to that ninth inning. But the Mets 2 runs came. We'll talk about him later in the show. Mark Vientos, the one guy who someone needed to come through because the Mets could not score at all on this game. But Vientos hits a key RBI double, which ends up being the go-ahead winner for them. And then it was the Mets pitching and their defense. You had great plays by Pete Alonso, a great course at the end too with Pete. But still, even before that play in the ninth inning, couple of great plays at first base, couple of scoops at first base. Ronnie Mauricio made a great play. Brett Beatty made a great play. Francis Lindor made a great play. Brandon Nimmo threw out Wilmer Flores at second. Just a very good defense. And I have been telling you, I've been saying, man, how the Mets defense, especially their infield defense, needs to be a lot better. It's got to be a lot better than what it has been. Excuse me. But the Mets infield defense has got to be a lot better. They have to be a lot better. And I think Saturday was the best I've seen the Mets infield defense, overall defense. Sure, Juan Soto even made a great defensive play in the ninth inning as well. Kind of an underrated defensive play, but even he made a great defensive play on Saturday when Jung Hoo Lee hit the ball that just hit the wall right field, and he played the Karen very well off the wall. If he doesn't do that, Jung Hoo Lee would have been at third base with one out. But instead, that Karen by Soto kept him at second base. So key play by Juan Soto. So key play by Juan Soto there. So, but Mauricio, great play. Beatty, great play. Lindor, great play. Nimmo, and then the ninth inning. Ninth inning, two outs. Jung Hoo Lee is on second base. Patrick Bailey comes to the plate, and Bailey has done very well against the Mets and had some couple of big hits against the Mets over the last couple of years. He lines it. You think it's a game time double. As soon as he hit the button, and it's funny because I think in that at bat with Edwin Diaz, the pitch before he took a slider and he kind of nodded. Like I don't know if anybody saw this, but you know, he took the slider and he kind of nodded. Kind of like, as soon as I saw that from Bailey, I was like, oh, he's got Diaz. He's got him. Like, it was just one of those things, you know, it was just one of those things where you just see a guy, almost like we see it with Soto sometimes. Like you see it with Bailey, and he saw that pitch and he took it, and he's like he know like I'm like, oh, he's got Diaz. The next pitch he throws to Diaz throws to him, he's gonna be on top of it. Like he knows he knows Diaz's pitches, he knows what's coming. He's very confident in this at bat. And I was like, oh boy, next pitch ropes it, and you think it's a game tying double. And Pete Alonso, as they say at ESPN Baseball Tonight, web gem, the best defensive play I think Pete Alonso has made in his entire career. And he had a good defensive series in San Francisco, and I've been hard on him in terms of his defense. But he's been at least an above average defender this season. He has at least, even with his mistakes here and there, like the play with Senga or the play against the Yankees, so on and so forth. But he has been at least, I think, in my opinion, above average, at least an above average defender. He leaps up into the air and makes a great web gem play, catching the ball. Um, you know, he catching the ball, and saves the game for the Mets. It was all pitching and defense for the Mets to come away with a win and pull it out. Just a very good job by Pete Alonso there to preserve the win on Saturday night and to give the Mets a chance to to get them their sixth straight win, to pull off another sweep. And heading into Sunday's game, I was like, Sunday night baseball, I was like, okay, if the Mets lose this game, that's fine. So you're on the West Coast. But theoretically, you wanted to win this one because you had Senga pitching and the Giants are throwing a bullpen game. Now, the Giants bullpen's pretty good, but still, with bullpen game's a bullpen game, and you have Senga, one of your better pitchers. And I think when he's at his best, the ace of the staff, uh, you theoretically, you want to win this one. Theoretically, you want to win this one. But Senga on Sunday again, not on his best. Yesterday, not his best. Definitely losing command. Definitely command wasn't there. I think he walked five guys. He only went 5 innings. It's been a slow. It's certainly been a slow comeback for Senga these last two games off the injury list. The first game was Kansas City. He went 4 innings. Of course, you knew that would be the case. He pitched pretty solidly in that one, even though he had to kind of work his way out of jams there, but he still pitched pretty solidly. Last two games. This one again, yesterday at least it didn't get away from him at sorts. But again, command wasn't there. He gave up two pitches, just meatballs over the middle just two pitches over the middle to Matt Chapman that Chapman hit for homers twice. Hey, Chapman's a great hitter. Nothing you can really do there, but hey. But Senga, again, I think as Senga gets a little more, again, would you like to see better from Senga? Sure. And I know some people are kind of on Senga right now for his last two outings. But, again, he's just coming off he's just coming off the injury list. He did have the long layoff after the All-Star break, after his first start after his first start in Kansas City. I think we do need to give Senga at least the benefit. I think you got to give Senga the benefit of the doubt, give him more time. you know, so just give him more time. So, but yeah, yesterday, yeah, it could have gone a lot better for him. His control wasn't there. And Senga, no. Senga's a perfectionist. He's a guy who takes his game very seriously, as we all know over these past 3 years. So he's not happy sometimes, even when he pitches really well, because he feels like he can do a lot better. So that's why you love him. So I think Senga will bounce back and he'll get right again. And of course, the Mets need it. Of course, that's of course the Mets need him to be you know so the Mets need him to be that guy. So, and then but on Sunday again, just like against the Angels, the Mets offense picked up Kodai Senga. They picked him up. He didn't pitch his best again for the second day in a row, but once again, the Mets offense picked him back up. In the top of the third, Lindor hit an RBI ground out, which made it 1-0, 1-0 Mets, and then Chapman hit the first home run. Then Ronnie Mauricio, who had the game of his career, he goes 4 for 4 with two doubles, a single, and a Barry Bonds-esque home run into McCovey Cove, but he hits an RBI double that makes it 2-1 Mets. Chapman hits his second homer of the day. That makes it 3-2 Giants. Top of the sixth, top of the seventh, we get the Ronnie Mauricio Bay Area McCovey Cove home run to tie the game, and then one bat. And this was off the Giants, one of the Giants' best relievers, and Randy Rodriguez, who had been so solid, so rock steady. He had been so good all year long, and he gives up back-to-back home runs to Ronnie Mauricio to tie the game, and then Juan Soto, who comes through with a big go-ahead homer in the top of the seventh, opposite field, a vintage Juan Soto home run. Yeah, who comes through with a vintage Juan Soto home run, and he gives the Mets a 4-3 lead. So hey, to Juan Soto, you'll love to see that. You're going to need. Soto's been a little bit off to you know Soto has been kind of off to a bit of a slow start in the second half of the year. Started off hot with the home run against Cincinnati, but he's been batting a buck 30-ish throughout the second half so far. And again, you need again. He finished the first half so strong, so you were expecting. I guess it was to be expected that you know that you know that so that you would that he would kind of cool down a bit. But like I said, second half of the year, you need Juan Soto to really be Juan Soto here. And it's not just been Soto. Lindor has been struggling as well, as we said. Pete's been really struggling to start the second half of the season. Nimmo is really the only one kind of hitting in the top of the order right now, at least consistently. But, you need Soto and Lindor and Pete in this time of the year, second half, division race going. You need them to be at the top of their game, and if you're going to make the playoffs and even win the division. So, but Soto comes through big. He comes through clutch. He had just struck out looking, in his last at bat. I think with a man on second. He had just struck out looking. So you were kind of hoping, hey, come on, Juan, let's go, let's go, buddy. And he hits a go ahead home run, into left center field, which gives the Mets a 4-3 lead. So great job by Juan Soto. Big clutch home run by Juan Soto. And hey, you get more of that from Juan Soto in these kind of situations, in these kind of games, as the second half goes on, good things will happen. So good thing for Juan Soto right there. Good job by Juan Soto right there. Top of the ninth, game still tied 4-3. Nimmo gets an RBI double. Excuse me, the Mets are still at 4-3. And Brandon Nimmo comes through with an RBI double, which scored Acuna, who actually pinch ran for Ronnie Mauricio, who just got a second double of the game. Acuna comes in, he scores on the double by Nimmo. Then we get to the bottom of the ninth and more Edwin Diaz. So Edwin Diaz again, he just barely escaped in the second inning on Saturday's game with the line out in the first at bat that went right to the glove of Brett Beatty. Then he struck out the next batter after Jung Hoo Lee's double, and he got lucky with Jung Hoo Lee's double because in any other ballpark that's a home run, and Lee just missed it. And like I said, Soto also played the carom really well. And then he faces Patrick Bailey, and Alonso makes the great play. So he got a bit lucky on Saturday. Sunday, this had to be all him, man. He made the mess on Sunday, and for him, he was gonna have to get out of it all by himself. He hits Ramos. He walks Devers. I think he walks another guy. He walks another hitter. So yeah, in the bottom of the ninth inning, Edwin Diaz got Brett Weiser to fly out. Then he walked Jung Hoo Lee. He hit Ramos. He walks Devers. So bases loaded, one out, 5-3 game. The tying runs are on base. The winning run is on first base. And Willie Adames, the guy who hit 2 home runs, come into the plate, and he strikes out both of them. And that's Edwin Diaz. That is the full Edwin Diaz experience. He can be so bad and be a roller coaster, and he's not finding the strike zone, has no control. He's hitting batters. I think the Ramos hit was already the third person he's hit so far in the second half of the season. He hit like 2 against the Angels in that series. But Willie Adames, he strikes out just, I think he had no control of his sliders. He just went fastball on Adames, struck him out on a nice 7.9 miles an hour fastball on the outside corner. And then he faced Matt Chapman, who had just homered twice. He was red hot in the day, and he struck him out swinging on fastballs. He just, again, attacked him with fastball. He had no control of his slider at all. And he just said, all right, I'm throwing fastballs at you. If you can hit it, you hit it. I'm just throwing fastballs at you. And I think, look, it worked. So Edwin Diaz has a knack, right? Where sometimes where he is out of control and he doesn't have his control going, he does have a way of getting out of it. You know, so so sometimes when Diaz doesn't have it, he always sometimes he's able to find it while not having it. So or he just says, all right, I'm just gonna throw fastballs at you and that's it. But that's how the Mets closed this game. That's how the Mets swept this game and won this game, and that's how the Mets swept the series. So and the Mets are currently now in a 7-game winning streak. Uh, hey, this was a team again that was 13-20 through their last, or excuse me, 10-20 over their last 30 games. Just after that Saturday loss to the Cincinnati Reds. They had been struggling. They had been slumping. They couldn't be. Their hitting, their offense wasn't particularly good and couldn't score runs or run scoring position. But that's been their case all year for them. Their pitching had kind of slowed down, terms of, especially with the starters. Their bullpen had really been struggling, using different names here and there. Um, but the bullpen has picked up the pace over the last 7 games. The bullpen's been a huge reason for the 7-game winning streak that they're on. They have been terrific throughout these last 7 games. And of course, we have to talk about the starting pitching staff. Again, not great, and again, the innings aren't there, but they still held their own in this staff, aside from Kodai Senga, who struggled a bit. And the offense, again, not all great, but still they had some good days and they scored runs, and saw some great production out of Ronnie Mauricio. And Francisco Alvarez returned, and he has been very good. Francisco Alvarez has returned to the lineup, and he has been very good. And you can see it. He's a lot more patient at the plate. He's waiting for his pitches, and he's hitting for power. He's hitting for power. He had a couple of doubles in San Francisco. He had the home run. He had the big double at Citi Field. He had the home run at Citi Field. Again, it's only a short sample size with Alvarez, so you don't want to go. You don't want to say 2023 Alvarez is back and everything. So you don't want to say 2023 Alvarez is back. So, but it's good to see from this short sample size we have with Alvarez so far. It's good to see. So it's very good to see with Francisco Alvarez. So that's a key thing going throughout this 7-game winning streak. Another key thing, and this happened, of course, over the past week, the New York Mets made their first trade of this season, or at least in season. Gregory Soto was added to the bullpen. He made his debut yesterday, pitched very well in his 1 inning of work. He's a guy who throws hard. He gets lefties out. Could be a bit wild at times, but he throws hard and he gets lefties out. And he gives the Mets that second lefty out of the bullpen that can complement Brooks Raley. And the Mets have needed that. They've been throwing in Brandon Waddell. Brandon Waddell had been fine, but again, you wanted someone better, right? And the Mets, I think, were able to hopefully get there Gregory Soto, but he had a good debut for the Mets yesterday after the New York Mets traded for him just a few days ago. I think it was on Thursday or Friday. He made his debut yesterday. So, but look, you like what you see from the 7-game winning streak. It's good to see the Mets finally get back on the winning track, right? The Mets, it's been a while for the Mets over the last 2 months. Over the last 2 months, they haven't been able to, or I should say over the last month, the Mets have not been able to get back to what they were doing from the beginning of the season all the way to June 12th, June 12th, June 13th. The Mets were playing such good baseball from opening day, or at least playing good baseball, because they still were struggling runs, the scoring position. but they were 21 games over 500. They have been on a roll. They were winning. They were 5.5 or so, 6.5 games ahead of first place in the division. And then that's when they hit their slide. They got swept in Atlanta. They got swept by the Rays. They lost 2-3 to Philly. They split. They split the Braves series in Atlanta. Excuse me, at Citi Field. They did take 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, but then they came back and lost 2 out of 3 to Baltimore. They lost. They won 2 out of 3. They came back after that and won 2 out of 3 in Kansas City to close out the first half. But then they came right back and lost 2 out of 3 to Cincinnati. So they had really been not. They really had, or actually before the Yankee series, they won 2 out of 3 against the Brewers. Like they won 2 out of 3 against the Brewers. They won 2 out of 3 against the Yankees. So that's when you thought, okay, the Mets were back on track. But then they lost 2 out of 3 to Baltimore. They had that bad doubleheader against the Orioles. But then they came back and won 2 out of 3 against Kansas City. But then lost 2 out of 3 to Cincinnati. So the Mets had really not been able to get uh, truly back on a roll, truly back into the thick of things, right? Truly, so they needed. I think they needed this kind of winning streak. So, but they got a tough task this week against the San Diego Padres, another tough wild card task in terms of that. But it's good to see them. At least it's good to see the Mets just get back on track, get a winning streak going, win some games, get some momentum going, get some more positive vibes going for this team, and get a winning streak going. The winning streak won't go. The winning streak, is a winning streak. They'll lose a game or two, of course, but it's good to see the Mets finally get back on the winning track, a full winning track, and get 7 wins in a row and get back-to-back sweeps. So, and it started by winning a game in Cincinnati against the Reds in a series they had already lost. So they won that Sunday game. They parlayed that into, you know, into these next 6 games. The next 6 games after that, they've now won and winning 7 in a row and sweeping an Angels team that was coming in hot and a Giants team that's in the wild card race. So good for the Mets to just get back on track and get a 7-game winning streak going as the Mets pair down to go to San Diego and play another 3 games there. We'll talk about that series in a moment. But we talked about the trade deadline. We talked about their trades, and obviously Thursday is the big day for David Stearns and the Mets organization. They got to make some additions. They got to find a center fielder. They got to find they got to find another reliever. They may have to find another starting pitcher, depending on their starters and how they're going. But they acquired Gregory Soto a few days ago to add to their bullpen. And just today, it was reported by SNY's Andy Martino. Now, I don't agree with this. Don't agree with this. They are talking to teams about Mark Vientos. They are discussing in trade talks. They are discussing Mark Vientos in trade talks. And there is believed, this is according to Andy Martino, rival executives believe that the Mets are willing to trade him this week. Let me get up the full report. Again, they're seeking relievers, possibly starting pitcher and a center fielder. They've been discussing Mark Vientos, and this is from Andy Martino in his report just today. They've been discussing Mark Vientos and trade talks this week, and rival executives believe that the team is willing to move him. Teams have asked about Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio. The Mets are not actively trying to rid themselves of any of those young infielders, but given Beatty's recent production and newfound versatility, rival executives have come away with the sense that Vientos is more available than the others. The view from here is that Vientos has the rare ability to carry a team while hot, which he does, and we saw that last year and especially in the postseason, and that trading him would carry significant risk of later regret. So yeah, look, the Mets are seeking relievers, possibly starting pitcher like Zach Gallen or Marmel Kelly, and a center fielder. Look, I would not trade Mark Vientos. And he's hit the ball very well as of late. He's just come back from the injury list. He started off slow, but over the last 10 or so games, he's hit really well. There was a report also from, I think, Bob Nightingale that said the White Sox, primarily Chicago White Sox, want Mark Vientos in a Luis Robert trade. I don't know if I'd make that trade. But I think this is key here from Andy Martino. This is a key thing right here. Where is it? Right here. The view from here is that Vientos has the rare ability to carry a team while hot, and that trading him, the Mets trading him, would carry significant risk of later regret. And I think that's the thing right there. I think Vientos, the Mets have a lot of young infielders, obviously. It's a log jam there with Acuna, Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos. So the Mets are they're in a good spot where they have infielders, young, talented infielders that teams want to have. But, you do want to keep one of them. And I think Vientos should be. I think Vientos, along with Ronnie Mauricio, should be the two guys of that logjam. Should be the ones that they go. Now we're keeping. They're untradeable. We're not trading them. Mauricio. It's his high ceiling. It's his bat. It's his potential. I think Mauricio could blossom into a really good player. I get, and this is not just, you know, this is not just me. So this is not just me watching him yesterday going 4 for 4. This is just me watching him 2 years ago, seeing him so far this year. He lost a year last year. Let's not forget last year he would have played in the big leagues, I think, if he didn't get hurt. He's got that at bat. Especially from the left side, he's got a good arm. His defense isn't terrible. It's actually relatively fine, but there are some mistakes there are some things with Mauricio that do need to be cleaned up. But overall, his talent is there. And I think the same thing goes with Mark Vientos. His third base has not been good this year. It's not been. And Brett Baty has essentially usurped him as the starting third baseman because his defense has just been that much better. But I see the ceiling and the talent, and I see the ceiling, I see the talent, and I think Vientos is higher than Baty's, you know, and I think Vientos' power, and that's the thing. Like, he worked so hard last year and he hit 27 homers and he was big in the postseason. You're a team that's trying to go to the postseason. Don't you want a guy who has that postseason experience and hit really well, especially a young guy who hit very well with postseason experience? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if the Mets, even for Luis Robert, I don't know if that's wise for the Mets to trade Mark Vientos. And to be honest, I would go trade for Cedric Mullins. Mullins would be the guy I want. But you know, I wouldn't. Teams see. Why do you think teams see Vientos? Why do you think teams want Mark Vientos? Because they see his talent, they see his power, they see his slugging, they see his hitting. They saw what he did last year. They saw what he did in the postseason. He's hit the ball well as of late. I don't, and I teams see that. So I think the Mets need to be a bit careful here when they trade. If talking about trading for Mark Vientos or trading Mark Vientos, I think they got to be very careful here. If you're going to trade one of these young guys, I would trade Brett Baty. Look, Brett Baty's had, he's played great defensively third base, and the Mets value defense. I know that. But I've seen Brett Baty on offense. He's been given multiple, I've seen Brett Baty on offense. His offense hasn't been bad per se this year. It's been hot and cold, but that's the thing. A lot of hot and cold, a lot of streakiness, a lot of hot and cold, a lot of streakiness. You know, I think we know what he is in terms of at the plate. I certainly think he could be a nice little role player for a team, and his defensive third, is pretty damn good, has been pretty darn good this year. Excuse me, has been pretty darn good this year compared to what it was 2 years ago. But he's the guy I would sell high on. Remember, he was a former first round pick, and he's got a good power. He's got some pop. He's hit 11 home runs this year. His defense is good. He's the guy I would sell high on. He's the one I would try to get teams to. He's the one I would trade for. And I would also, even though I love his talent and I love his potential, I would look to trade Luis Angel Acuna. He's another one with high ceiling, high potential. But when you factor in Ronnie Mauricio outplaying him this year, or at least lately, or at least the last 2 months now since he came up, when you factor in guys like Jet Williams coming up from the minor leagues, there's with Acuna's struggles, there's not much room now. And like I said, Jet Williams is coming up. So Acuna has a high ceiling, he has high potential. He's electrifying on the base paths. The problem right now that you have right now with him is that he doesn't get on base. Over the past couple of months, he has not been able to get on base. So, but he's also been a guy who hasn't been able to get much playing time. So I don't know whether it's him or the Mets. I don't know. All I know is this. Mauricio has played well. Vientos is starting to hit. Baty has played well defensively. So you're kind of leaving Acuna now as an odd man out. And he's not really getting an opportunity. All Acuna has to do is hit the baseball and get on base. That's really all he has to do. Because he gets on base, he's going to fly. So, but it would be him and Baty I would sell high on, and I would make sure to keep Vientos and Mauricio. Those would be I would keep Mauricio and Vientos, and I would sell high and try to trade Baty and Acuna. That would be me, but it looks like teams are now looking at Vientos. I just would not trade Mark Vientos. I wouldn't trade him. That's just my personal opinion. Teams, according to my Puma of the New York Post, teams are also asking about Starling Marte. I know he's 36 years old. I know he's a free agent at the end of the year. I know many Met fans and many people would say just trade him. But you know what? He's been good this year at the plate. He's been good. He had another good day yesterday, and he's been good since coming off the IL too. But he's been good all year long at the plate as a DH. Again, he doesn't give you 25 home runs, of course, as a DH, but boy, he can hit. He can swing the bat. That's always been the case. That's always been the case. You know, with Marte, the dude could still swing. The thing with Marte was never that he couldn't swing the bat. It was just he couldn't play right field because of the knees and the quad and everything, the surgeries. But put him at DH and let him swing the bat, let him run some bases. Like he's still pretty good at that. And he's been very good at that. And oh yeah, the Mets have had some struggles this year hitting against left-handed pitching. Starling Marte has been really good hitting against left-handed pitching this year. So I don't think you want to trade that away. I understand he's 36. I understand he's got 1 year left on the contract. I understand he's been injury prone. I understand all of that, but he's hit this year when he has hit this year. He's been good. He's been really your only good DH. Winker's been in and out with injuries, and even when he was in, he was struggling. Vientos has been in and out in terms of third base, DH, injured list, etc. Marte has been really the best DH you have on the roster. I would keep him. I wouldn't trade him at all. I would keep him. And he's good against left-handed pitching. I would keep Marte and I would keep Mark Vientos. So that's the latest trade stuff right now going on with the Mets. They acquired Gregory Soto. They've been asked about Starling Marte, and they've been asked about Mark Vientos. But we'll see what happens this week. We will talk on Thursday. When we do a MazzaOnMets, we'll go live. We'll go live about everything going on trade deadline around Major League Baseball. Some trades are already going on. There's already some big news about a couple of big relievers that could have been available at the trade deadline. First, it was Felix Bautista of the Baltimore Orioles, but he's hurt and it looks like he's going to be out for a little while longer with the Orioles. And then, of course, there's Emmanuel Clase, who just got suspended. So there's two big relievers already off the market for teams. And some people have brought up Bautista and Clase for the Mets, but those two guys are now out, or those two guys are now looks like they're not going to be traded and everything because they got their own things going on. But and the Yankees acquired Ryan McMahon. They also acquired Ahmed Rosario. So everyone's going to be, of course, the Giants made the big trade, the biggest trade of the season. The San Francisco Giants made by trading for Rafi Devers. That was back in June. So we'll talk about more about it on Thursday as all the action goes on and the activity goes on, everything goes on in Major League Baseball, and see what David Stearns has up his sleeve, because this is a very big. But there's another report. The Yankees have discussed adding Harrison Bader. I could see that. I could see the Yankees having a reunion with Harrison Bader. I've seen the Mets also be a possibility for Harrison Bader. That's another look. Loved Harrison Bader last year. He's another one I would, Bader and Luis Severino, right? Those are two guys at the Mets that people are like, oh, the Mets should think about trade for them, get reunions with them. I don't know about that. No, I don't know. This will be Thursday, the trade deadline around Major League Baseball will be interesting. This is certainly not the strongest trade deadline year in Major League Baseball this year. They're certainly not the strongest in recent years, or at least in several years or many years, but they'll still be very interesting. The Mets have to make some moves. They got to improve center field. I think they need another starter, and they certainly need another relief pitcher. There was a report today from The Athletic or I think from Joel Sherman, that the Mets are interested in Brandon Lau. He's a guy I would certainly think about trading for. You can put him at second base and you put Jeff McNeil at center field. He's not an outfielder, but if you get low, put him at second base, starting second baseman, and you put Jeff McNeil permanently as your starting center fielder, I think that would be fine. So Brandon, and he's another one that hits very well, hits well for average. So I think Brandon Lau would be a good addition if they can make that trade. So they're interested in him. So it'll be interesting again. Thursday trade deadline. We'll see what David Stearns has in store, because this is a big trade deadline. The Mets are trying to win a championship. Before that, though, they got a big division race with the Philadelphia Phillies. That's the thing. Throughout the 7-game winning streak, the Mets have now gotten first place back from the Phillies. They're now a game and a half up from the Phillies in first place in the division. They're a game and a half up on them after the Yankees beat the Phillies yesterday. So they're in division. They're in a tight division race with the Phillies. That's going to come down wire to wire. They have a big series with the Phillies coming up later in August, and another big series with the Phillies in September. So that division is going to come down wire to wire between them and the Phillies. And then, of course, if the Mets do make the playoffs, they're trying to win a championship, of course. So this is a big trade deadline for David Stearns. This is a very big one. So we'll see what David Stearns does on Thursday on the trade deadline. So we'll see, but it'll be very interesting for the Mets. They should be one of the more active teams in Major League Baseball. They've already been active with the acquisition of Gregory Soto, so to their bullpen. So we'll see what happens there. So the starting lineup for the New York Mets today, as we now begin to preview their series, as we now begin to preview the series with the San Diego Padres, Frankie Montez will take them out today for the New York Mets against Dylan Cease. Frankie Montez takes them out for the Mets against Dylan Cease. The starting lineup for today is Brandon Nimmo leading off at left field, Francisco Lindor shortstop, Juan Soto at third base at right field, batting third, batting fourth, Pete Alonso at first base, playing center field, batting fifth is Jeff McNeil. Doing the DHing for today is Mark Vientos against the righty Dylan Cease. And then batting seventh at second base is Brett Beatty. Doing the catching, batting eighth is Francisco Alvarez. And batting third and batting ninth and playing third base today is Ronnie Mauricio. So that's your Mets lineup for today in their game against Dylan Cease of the San Diego Padres as they enter a big series with them. The Mets, let's see where the Padres are currently in the wild card round, because again, they're battling for a wild card. The Padres are currently 3.5 back of the top spot of the wild card, or 3.5 back of the Phillies for the third wild card spot. Although there is they are technically in the third wild card spot because the Cubs and Brewers in the National League Central are tied for the division title. They have a big series this week today, the Cubs and the Brewers beginning today. They have a big series this week between the Cubs and the Brewers, but technically the Padres are the third wild card spot. It's just the Cubs and Brewers are tied for first place, and they have the top spot in the wild card. But the Padres are the third wild card spot in the wild card at 57-49, technically speaking, technically. Tomorrow, TBD for the Padres, not announced yet. Sean Manaea will make his start for the Mets tomorrow at 9:40. And then Wednesday afternoon, Clay Holmes will face his former team, the San Diego Padres. And again, the Padres have not yet announced their pitching, their starters for tomorrow and Wednesday. They have not yet made that announcement. But yeah, that's the series for this week for the Mets. Again, the Mets. San Diego's always been a tough place for the Mets to play in. But again, it's the same thing I say. Just keep it. Just try to score runs, scoring position. I doubt Edwin Diaz will be available today. He pitched a lot the last 2 days, so Stanek didn't pitch. Stanek didn't pitch yesterday, so Stanek would probably be pitching the ninth inning today. So, but Diaz will more than likely be unavailable today. Just it'd be nice again coming into this West Coast road trip. If you had told me 4-2, I would have taken it. So, but they got the sweep against San Francisco. I think, of course, you want to sweep against San Diego, but I think you would take just one. If you can get at least, if you can win at least one game against the Padres this week, and you come back home 4-2 on the West Coast road trip and as they come home to play the Giants, I think you'll be okay with that. But of course, you'd love to get 2 out of 3. So just keep again more further keeping the positive momentum going on for the Mets. But again, it all comes down to pitching, how their stars do against a tough, electrifying Padres lineup. We got Montez, Manaea, and Holmes pitching against a very tough Padres lineup, a very electrifying, very good Padres lineup that flat out hits. And they'll be facing Dylan Cease today, and we'll see who the Padres pitch tomorrow, Wednesday. But again, score runs, scoring position, as that's what they got to keep doing. So, we'll see how they do here. It'd be good for the Mets to at least try to keep the positive going. But if they can just take one in San Diego and come back 4-2 off the West Coast road trip, I think that would be good too. I think you would at least take that. So, but that's your series this week for the Mets as they're at San Diego for a 3-game as they continue their 6-game West Coast road trip. In terms of the National League East, the Philadelphia Phillies are in Chicago. They're playing the White Sox, not the Cubs. They're playing the White Sox. Like I said, the Cubs are playing the Brewers. So, yeah, if you're the Mets, the Mets certainly need to at least try to win one, if not maybe try to get, maybe they get lucky and they win 2 in San Diego, but try to at least get 1 in San Diego because the Phillies will get the White Sox this week. So, they'll probably beat it wouldn't surprise me at all if they swept the White Sox this week, the Phillies. So yeah, but the Mets play the Padres this week. We'll see how they do. We will be back on Thursday for more MazzaOnMets as we recap the series with the Padres and preview the series with the San Francisco Giants. And of course, trade deadline day. We'll talk about all the activity and action going on in Major League Baseball and how the Mets are doing with any moves that the Mets make. We'll talk a lot about that on MazzaOnMets on Thursday. But that'll do it today for MazzaOnMets. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I greatly appreciate it. And we will see you on Thursday. I've been your host, Evan Mazza. We will see you on Thursday for more MazzaOnMets. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's go Mets.